In this lesson, I'm going to talk briefly about the evolution of applications. So we've seen that from terminal access to mainframe applications, right, to desktop applications, moving forward to client-server apps, and then eventually getting on the internet and ending up with cloud-enabled applications as of today. As far as the systems are concerned, starting from the multiple distributed servers to large-scale servers, and then we had the server farms, and eventually the VMs or the virtualization technology came into existence, and now we're running VMs upon VMs. Well, where do we go from here? Now applications are becoming large, and huge in terms of lines of code, in terms of the sheer size of the apps. So if you have, let's say, 5 or 10 million lines of code in a given software, using the conventional or monolithic architecture will be really cumbersome, right? So you need something new or an existing technology perhaps that can handle all of those lines of code. And that's where microservices architecture comes into play. It allows you to break the application down into smaller chunks, right? Or containers, if you will. Just a buzzword, right? And then these containers are sort of like isolated, has its own set of instructions, right? Dependencies, library, code, and so on. And then you place all these containers into an infrastructure or a cloud platform. In other words, a distributed environment. Okay, so that's where the newer side of software development or app development is heading. So briefly, the application development changes. Previously we had huge applications, as I mentioned earlier. Let's say you have 5 million lines of Java code. What do you do with it, right? It will take hours for you to build, and huge downtime is inevitable if you make a mistake or some developers do something wrong or incorrect. The entire application may be in jeopardy, right? So what do we do now? We break into microservices, and container deployment now takes seconds. So these smaller chunks, as I mentioned earlier, contains each piece of code that the developer sitting anywhere in the world, in fact, can code and use these containers and deploy images to an online repository or registry, and then the entire app will come together piece by piece. So this allows fast releases of app versions, right? So the world is mobile now. We have mobile apps, and these require changes almost every week, or let's say on a monthly basis or quarterly basis, so depending upon the app itself. So using these microservices architecture and containers would allow fast releases of app versions. There are also independent deployment of each piece of code, so not one place is required for all these developers or programmers to sit in and code. They can be anywhere, independent of each other, and be working on a specific set of code or instructions. So that's where the future is now towards application development for apps, is moving towards the microservices architecture. But how do we manage such a huge enterprise level software app, for example, or the architecture itself? What are the tools that are available to us? So next I'm going to show you some of these technologies that will help us manage and scale our applications. So what do enterprise demands today, right? Companies are looking for agility and speed. Okay, they're looking to scale their apps. Lower costs is obviously very important to enterprise these days. Scalability, in other words, they want to be able to grow as their business grows. They would like their software app to grow as their business grows. They would not want to spend millions of dollars or thousands of dollars into a new application. Rather, they would want an infrastructure or an app design that grows as the enterprise grows. Redundancy. Obviously, conventional enterprise software, for example, if one thing goes down, the entire software is down, right? So everybody goes on vacation, for example, right? Like we used to have back in those days, where the software goes down and the entire infrastructure for the entire organization is down for, let's say, an hour or two or whatever, right? And obviously that's cost to the enterprise. So these microservices architecture also provides redundancy as well. And of course, enterprise also are looking for, and the demand, reduce infrastructure costs, right? They don't want to buy all these servers. They don't want to have their own data centers. It's too costly. So they look for the cloud platforms that offer all of these microservices so that they can manage all of the demands for the enterprise. And of course, multi-talented workforce is also the enterprise demands these days. Companies are not looking for, let's say, just a Java developer, right? Well, they are, technically speaking, but it'll be nice to have a higher skill set, right? So if you were a Java developer, for example, it'd be nice for you to know the Google platform, right? Or some other technology also. So for instance, let's say you are a Python programmer, right? And now you want to get into the interaction design area, where you're designing a blueprint or architecture for the entire website. So you want to be able to have those skills as well and not just remain a hardcore developer. So things are changing, right? The technology, the industry is evolving. And as the distributed systems increase, the multi-talented workforce is also in high demand. All right, so as promised, here are the tools that are available for helping us with the microservices architecture. So we have the Google Cloud Platform, for instance, that contains Kubernetes. And what Kubernetes does, it allows us to scale and distribute our application, right? So it takes all these containers, right, these small chunks, and groups them into pods and then manages them. So as your website traffic, for example, grows from 1 million hits a day to all of a sudden 5 million hits a day under a conventional infrastructure, that'd be very difficult sometimes, right? But with the Google Cloud Platform, for example, and Kubernetes, it would automatically scale to size and manage those 5 million hits for that day. And Docker is a wonderful technology. Allows containers. You can create images, place them into containers, and ship them to the cloud platform. And that is really the future of application delivery. So we want to break all these new software apps down into smaller, meaningful chunks, right? And then use with the cloud platform. And this could be Google Cloud Platform. You can use AWS platform as well, and there are others as well, like Mesos and so on. So in this lesson, I just wanted to cover the evolution of applications, where we started and where we are, and where we're going in the future. So as software developers, programmers, you ought to keep this in mind. Where and how do you progress with the most current technology? So I hope this helps, and let's move to the next lesson.